Harper Business and Harper Audio present Burnout Immunity: How Emotional Intelligence Can Help You Build Resilience and Heal Your Relationship with Work, by Kandi Wiens. Read by Eleanor Caudill. A note before we begin. Don't forget to download the accompanying enhancement PDF from your audiobook provider. It contains exercises and charts and will be referred to throughout as the enhancement. For Spencer, Colson, and Sawyer, you have my whole heart for my whole life. 1. Breaking free of burnout. The nurse checked my blood pressure twice, a third time, then a fourth. She quietly exited the exam room, and I grabbed my BlackBerry to check on work. This was supposed to be a routine physical, the kind where I popped in for half an hour, got my A, and went back to work. Minutes later, the doctor came in. "What's going on, Kandi?" she asked. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine," I said. And I really did feel fine. The problem was, what had come to feel normal to me was a life-threatening blood pressure reading of 200/110. As I would soon learn, a reading that high is considered a hypertensive emergency. If it's not treated, it can lead to any number of terrifying outcomes: organ failure, vision loss, a stroke, heart attack, death. My doctor shook her head. "You are not fine. We need to get this under control ASAP." She immediately gave me medication to lower my blood pressure and a strong dose of Xanax. She then personally called my husband to pick me up, and, once I was stable, ordered me to go straight home and remain on bed rest for 3 days. If I experienced so much as a slight headache, I was to go to the ER. My first thought: I can't call in sick. I have a leadership development program to run next week. My second thought, which even then I recognized as unhealthy: thank God, I finally have a legitimate excuse to sleep. My third: she's absolutely right. I am not fine. That day in the doctor's office happened in 2011. In a way, I'd been heading there my entire life. I grew up on an Indian reservation in eastern Montana. Picture big blue skies, golden wheat fields, and the rich beauty of Native American culture. Alongside abject poverty, little opportunity for education, and on my mom's side of the family, a long history of mental illness and alcoholism. My parents divorced after the tragic death of my 2-year-old middle sister, leaving my mom to care for a newborn and me. Needless to say, we struggled. A lot. My mom was traumatized and grieving in ways I couldn't begin to understand, and we lived in government-subsidized housing and relied on food stamps and Indian health care for basics. I was constantly bullied at school for being too skinny. Not my fault, I would think to myself. I've barely eaten in the last 5 days. So began my struggle with adversity-induced stress and insecurity-driven anxiety. I blame 1970s sitcoms The Love Boat and Fantasy Island for awakening the inner overachiever in me. Before we got our first TV in 1978, I had no idea there was a life outside of poverty. Those 2 shows introduced me to characters who had important jobs, fancy clothes, and enough money to travel. Seeing another way to live gave me a vision of what life could be like one day if I worked really, really hard. I pictured myself traveling for work, carrying a shiny briefcase, and doing some kind of job where I was an expert. In what, it didn't matter, and people came to me for guidance. When I was 12 years old, the Montana judicial system allowed me to decide where to live, and I moved to my dad's house. Life changed overnight. Dad, who came from a long line of hardy German Mennonite homesteaders, was disciplined and industrious. He had a real job, as a loan officer at a small bank, so suddenly I was in a stable home environment. He made sure I did my homework and never missed school. I found that I loved learning, and for the first time, I experienced the exhilaration of accomplishing goals. Within 6 months, I went from almost straight Fs to almost straight As, and my taciturn dad nearly burst with pride. And so began my addiction to external validation and an overactive need to achieve. as did a strong fear of disappointing my dad, especially.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?